Howdy, 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 and thank you for joining me tonight. We got a really great topic tonight. A lot has been happening in the world of the auditing and the protesting of the Scientology orgs, and it seems like some rather fishy stuff is going on. Hey, we got Duncan Hoonigan here, but I don't know if that's actually Duncan because we know that wife of his, we know she'll fake it and come in here and try to act like she's Duncan, but hey, let's say hey to everybody that's here. Let's see, Creepy's here. Welcome, Creepy. Laura Waldy, who is one of my new moderators. This week we'll be getting together and getting everything laid out. So Laura will be stepping in. So everybody make sure you say hi to Laura and show her some love and support there. Victoria, Mary Smith, welcome. Some dude named Clearwater Chad. I don't know what the heck he's doing around here. Janiki Flem from Norway. Awesome sauce. Let's see. Oh, Grand Theft Hoopty, of course. That's one of the channel's favorites. Shane. Nebulous. Creepy old lady. I still love that name. Joker. And let's see if I miss. Oh, Inappropriate Effort. Tracy Franklin. Lene Bonham. Benahan. And sorry if I butcher your name. I do not mean to. Helen Penny. And looks like we're caught up with everybody here. As you'll notice, I'm dressed with a little bit of a festive shirt on tonight. And the reason for that is we got to bring back our old pal from the channel. He's been distant from us for so long. Everybody say howdy to Chad.
Thank you, Poe.
What is that weather forecast for us?
Okay, Poe, coming up, we got a lot of work to do. 28 degrees in Buffalo, Clearwater. The precip is at 0. The wind is at 2. Roscoe advises it's 57% humid, and that's the weather in a nutshell, Poe.
Man, I took Roscoe out today and I ran him ragged. That dog, if you've seen in the shorts, he loves frisbees. He chews through them things like they're candy. And I took him out today and I ran him ragged because he's had so much energy. He's just been driving me nuts lately. Oh, my word. So, Chad, explain to everybody where you've been, why you haven't been around for a lot of the lives that have been going on.
Oh, back to work, Poe. But I'm here when I could be, and pretty much every Sunday, I'm available, Poe.
And folks, Chad's not just working one job; he's working two.
Yep.
And you're remodeling a house for rental, and you got just a bunch going on. Plus, you're a father; you got a lot of stuff going on there. So, folks, when Chad can't make it, there's a good reason for it. He's got a lot going on in his life. Chad, have you been seeing a lot of the stuff that's been going on to the protesters and the 1A auditors that are out there?
I'm catching what I could, Poe. But I so much content I can't even make heads or tails. Did someone get arrested tonight? Is that what's going on?
It's happening all over. Probably somebody got arrested tonight that we don't even know about, and there's probably going to be lives going on about that as well. I've had a lot of people. Hey, Susie, you're only 4 minutes behind us, hon, so don't worry about having to come back in at double time. A lot of people have been asking about the RICO and how the RICO can be used against Scientology. And so, I've been looking into that. I've been speaking to attorneys, and I just wanted to go over something that, so we can start piecing this together for everybody so you can understand. And this is from justia.com. And there are actually two different ways of going about RICO. One is the criminal aspect. And of course, that's the one where if you get found guilty of RICO, you go to jail. And the other is the civil. And we're going to talk about those real quick here so that folks understand. And I'm, one of the things is RICO is not something I ever had to really deal with as a law enforcement officer because it's a federal kind of thing. I believe some states also use it as well, but never on a city cop level. I never dealt with anything like that. But from Justia.com, here is the criminal RICO. To violate RICO, a person must engage in a pattern of racketeering activity connected to an enterprise. The law defines 35 offenses as constituting racketeering, including gambling, murder, kidnapping, arson, drug dealing, bribery. Significantly, mail and wire fraud are included on the list. These crimes are known as predicate offenses. To charge under RICO, at least 2 predicate crimes within 10 years must have been committed through the enterprise. Note that an enterprise is required. This might be a crime family, a street gang, cartel, but it also must be a corporation, a political party, or a managed care company. The enterprise just has to be a discrete entity, but an enterprise is not the same as an individual. Thus, a corporation may be the enterprise through which individuals commit crimes, but it can't be both individual and enterprise. The criminal RICO statute provides for prison terms of 20 years and severe financial penalties. The law also allows prosecutors to attach assets, which is we talked about things like civil asset forfeiture and those kinds of things. So they can't be whisked out of the country before judgment. All right, now as you get into the civil side of it, even though RICO threatens very long prison terms for racketeers, the law's real power is its civil component. Anyone can bring civil suit if they've been injured by a RICO violation, and if they win, receive treble damages. In the 1980s, civil lawyers attempted to fit many different claims inside of RICO, but in the 1990s, the federal courts set up a number of hurdles for civil RICO claims. To succeed, a RICO claim, a plaintiff must show criminal activity. You must show the defendant committed one of the enumerated RICO crimes, which include broad crimes of mail and wire fraud. If you bring a claim on a fraud basis, however, the court will apply strict scrutiny. Pattern of criminal activity. One crime is not enough. You have to show a pattern of at least 2 crimes. A pattern requires the crimes be related in some way. Same victim, same methods, same participants, or continuous, meaning it was conducted over at least a year. Within statute of limitations, the RICO court held RICO has a 4-year statute of limitations, which begins tolling from the time the victim discovers his or her damages. RICO is powerful and complex. If you think you've been seriously injured by a criminal activity that's covered under RICO, consult a lawyer to see if you have a case, but make sure it's worth the effort. RICO civil suits can be very costly. So a lot of people have been asking about RICO and what can be done about Scientology under the RICO statutes. Well, going into, I looked it up. Chad and I were talking about this before the show. The predicate offenses that compile to be made as part of RICO. And there are some things that might fall under Scientology, but for the most part, when we're talking about Scientology, about RICO, and as it would pertain to Scientology, where it becomes a problem is that these are more towards your fraud, your theft, your bribery, those kinds of things. And that's where you have to be able to prove those things. Now, as you just saw, there was the ability to file civil RICO charges against an entity. But the problem is that you have a lot in the 90s, there was strict guidelines put in for it. And these judges have to look at those strict guidelines. Also, on top of it, you have the fact that with these cases that are going on, it's very expensive to bring forth a civil suit under RICO. It is also it's going to take forever, and it's going to take a lot of stuff. Plus, you have a 4-year window for statutes of liability for the statutes on it. And I think that my personal opinion, but I'm not an attorney. That would be for an attorney who handles these kinds of things. But Scientology skims past a lot of these things. But, that would be, we have to have someone with that who's been an executive or something like that, that can bring forth the kind of documentation that would be needed. Now, we've talked about the fact that Render has stated he's turned over all these documents to the FBI. But it's also been very important that we know just turning those documents over doesn't in and of itself mean that they have evidence of things. It's it's kind of like handing over a coded message during wartime without a way to decode that or someone who can translate that into actual terminology that can be used. Those documents in and of themselves could just be a plain sheet of paper. There has to be someone who's going to be able to come in and translate that so that the prosecutors, the FBI, all them know what's going on. And hopefully we've got more than enough people who are willing to step up. We just need to make sure that the FBI is willing to do that, or the Department of Justice. And that's another thing that we keep talking about on here. And I want to make sure that I put this out. I try to put it out pretty much every stream that I do now. I have just posted a link to, if you don't know who your representative is for where you live, this is for the United States House of Representatives, Congress. All right, go to that link and you can pull up who your representative to Congress is, and you can, start firing off an email to them or a letter. I wouldn't try a phone call. I doubt you're ever going to get on the phone with a representative unless they're calling you. And I know that personally. I've talked to enough of them. But you've got that going on. You can also contact the IRS and find out from them, see if they have any interest in going after it. Let's see. I'm looking here. Hey, Sharifa's here. Welcome, Sharifa. Mandy McGee. Hey, Mandy. Just making sure I'm not missing any. Miss Sunrise Dawn. Welcome. Joel McCoy, the legend. Joel says the cops were called on the Denver protesters again today, a few hours ago. They were told someone was shooing at the building. 6 cops this time. No major contact. All safe and free. Awesome. That's, we were talking about last night when I think it was either last night or the night before, talking about, all these people that are getting arrested and what's going on, the heavy police response. Folks, you got to remember, and there were some folks, I think Joel was one of the people who actually put it into the comments, was the fact that they get a call like that. They've got to respond. They got to respond en masse. They've got, you have to make that appearance there, and you've got to make sure you've got enough people that are going to be able to handle it. Let's see. Nisa, question. If the FBI finds a paper leading to Scientology, can they get all their files seized? Well, I can't speak for the FBI. I can speak from my personal history and things like that. You have to be able to show that that document that you have provides evidence of criminal action that has happened on the part of the organization or an individual within the organization. And then you go to the prosecutor, you tell the prosecutor, hey, look, we've got this. This is proof of what's going on with this. Can we get a warrant to go in and seize more documents from them? So that's going to be something that we all need to think about with it. Is, we all have a lot of beliefs. We have a lot of things that we know, but when it comes down to the actual prosecution of a crime, it's not more than, they talk about police instinct, gut feelings, things like that. I can tell you right now, that gets thrown out of court real quick, because the court's not going to look at it as, oh, this guy's, he's got this sixth sense. The court doesn't believe in that stuff. Now, we all know, hair stands up on the back of your neck, something's going on. But the fact is the courts look at it differently, and attorneys eat that stuff up all day long. Let's see here. We've got, Trisha G from Chile, Northwest Ohio. I left the house here and it was 31 degrees. I got down to Toledo earlier today and it was almost 40 degrees. So it's, it's up and down. Chitza, what's up, Chitza? Pup Groomer. Let's see. Marjan. Howdy, Marjan. Nebulous, they are playing secretive malarkey, just like the Freemasons. Well, when you're in Toledo. Okay. Yeah. I'm thinking Northeast Ohio. I'm thinking Akron, Cleveland area. You're right down the road from me. I'm down in Toledo Monday through Friday. So our courier service, we're down in Toledo all the time. So Toledo, Perrysburg, Woodville, all around that area there. So let's see. Oh, you see this, Chad? Christian
Oh,
Delahoy,
wow. That's
outside
close.
Buffalo,
Chad's in
New York.
Buffalo.
Actually have snow on the ground finally. Now, when I was on my way back up to Orchard Lake to drop everything off from doing the route today, there's snow all over the place up there just north of Detroit. So yeah, it's interesting. Got people from all over. Mishawaka, Indiana, Central Ohio. Oh, so we got a lot of people from all over.
Excellent.
Nebulous, or should I be so bold to say transhumanism? Have at it. I mean, there's so many different ways to describe what's going on. Sorry, I'm a little bit off my game tonight. I'm still collecting from last night's interview with Jamie Mustard. Just so much came out, and I've literally just been hit with a wave of things that are going on. So I'm getting a ton of things, and we got Scientology peeling the onions from Clearwater, Las Vegas is in here tonight.
Hey, Mike.
Let's see, Shane. Shane, definitely. Cedar Point. Oh my goodness. Yeah, there's a reason why they call it the roller coaster capital of the world. Believe me. But you know what? I'm not even really that interested in them anymore. I tried to ride that one in Kuala Lumpur inside that mall, but unfortunately, a lot of those coasters over there in Southeast Asia just aren't big enough for a big old boy like me. Catherine Reynolds, Scientology equals the boy who cried wolf. Well, we know a lot of what's going on with them, where they. Chad, you got makeup on?
No, I seen that too. I don't. No, I don't. I don't know
I
if
didn't.
I'm looking
I didn't
extra
think you
rosy
did,
today or what.
but Squirrel SPTV. Why do the politicians and law enforcement seem totally uninterested in investigating? I have emailed my congressmen, mayors, governors, FBI, and no one has got back to me. Well, first off, I can tell you, unless you have an in with a representative, 9 times out of 10, you'll get like a chain letter back. But it's the fact we have to keep doing this. We have to keep doing it. He says it looks like you got lipstick on, Chad.
Oh, okay. No, I
Wearing a
don't know
little bit
what
of
I
lip
was trying
balm,
to think
little.
if I ate something. I don't recall.
Yeah. Oh, you're over on the Oregon side. Okay, Northwood area. Yeah, I'm down through there. We go all over the place. But Squirrel, the thing is that it seems like there is a clear amount of influence that's going on with some of these departments like LAPD. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do an entire episode about the corruption that's going on with LAPD. And it goes much further than just with Scientology. There, the LA Sheriff's Department that has been corrupted with actual gang members being part of the Sheriff's Department. So you can't tell me that the LAPD doesn't have that as well. So there's a lot going on within corruption and those things. And the only way that we're going to make things happen, a lot of people keep asking me, why can't we make things happen? You have to keep screaming it off the mountaintops. All right. Someone had in the comment section about last night's interview with Jamie Mustard, they were asking about about the fact that why isn't it being covered by mainstream media? Why can't someone sell their story? Let's face it, a lot of mainstream media is dying. I mean, look at it. Sports Illustrated, I just saw, and I don't read Sports Illustrated, but there's a lot of things out there about the fact that Sports Illustrated is done. The parent company that owned it took it back from the company that was licensing the name and the rights to it. So, mainstream media is dying. Social media, YouTube, X, Instagram, TikTok, those are becoming the new mainstream media. That's how people are getting their news, because there's just so much back and forth, and there's a lot of respect that has been lost for the mainstream media. And so this is where we get our voices out. And the more we scream it, the more people that are seeing it, the better chance we have of getting it out there. And I quite honestly, I have a lot of questions and reservations as it comes to LA and how LA is going to handle it. Now, from what I'm hearing from some folks, is Denver has treated things a bit differently. They've been a little bit less, as we can say, corrupted by Scientology, but we're going to see. I'm still waiting to hear from some folks about Denver and what happened out there. Laura Waldy, yes, it was a tough stream last night. Yes, very emotional for a lot of people. It's a conversation that was important to have to work towards healing. Absolutely. And you saw, I mean, there was a certain point where he started describing things within me, and it's the light bulb just went off. Let's see, Dwayne Mansell, law enforcement officers have trouble piercing Scientology because of a religious freedom. Well, that's one of the things. Plus, you got to remember, it's a very closed kind of thing that they're not allowing people to get into it. La Pintura Bella, a little late, but all settled for no. Awesome, thank you. Yes, Marjan, actually, I am trying to speak with a journalist. I got someone reached out to me and sent me some contact information for a journalist who actually broke a lot of the story going behind the LA Sheriff's Department. So yeah, it's amazing stuff. So I'm hoping to be able to, if not be able to get this person on, to at least get some information from them for my next live, where I talk about LAPD and corruption. Joel McQueen, I went to town hall with my Congress rep. I asked him if he would support a hearing on COS tax exempt. He did not even know what COS were. If they have one in your area, go. They are right there. And that's another thing, is if they don't have a big presence where you live, your representative may not even know what's going on with Scientology. I mean, let's face it, Ukraine, China, all these things that are going on in the world. Now we have the Houthis, things like that. They're all huge international things that are going on. So it's quite possible, if you don't have a Scientology org in your area, the thing is that they may not even know anything about it because it's not affecting them. Nebulous question: if the Department of Homeland Security estimated $150 billion this year in human trafficking, why isn't a human trafficking cult of interest to them? It's not getting them, in my personal opinion, in my personal experience, Nebulous, is the simple fact they're not getting enough press from it. If they were getting a bunch of press from it, they would be all over it. Believe me. And I've seen how it happens. Julie B. LAPD has been a problem as long as I remember. I'm over 60. And there's a lot of people, and I've talked about it before, how when I first became a law enforcement officer, Scientology, LAPD was one of the benchmarks, because they had this amazing reputation, and they had, they were out there. They were the leaders in technology and new techniques and things that a lot of departments to this day still don't have. They had them when I started, and we're talking over 30 some years ago. So they had this huge amount of respect that went out to Scientology. Why do I keep saying that? I'm too stupid tonight. But LAPD had a huge amount of respect. A huge amount of people looked up to them. And the thing is that over the years, that has seriously eroded. And especially with a lot of things going on with Scientology and how people have been treated over it and the connections between them, there's a lot of people that, it's getting out there. People are losing that respect for LAPD. Then you have things about, about the gang infiltrations and things like that. So, Chad, were you saying something?
Yeah, Poe, I just wanted to say, in the early 90s, the LAPD accused a football player of doing some things that he was factually innocent of, and I haven't felt the same way about the LAPD since that.
I've always had, when I first started out, the individual LAPD officers, I knew some of them. As a matter of fact, there's someone that I used to work with. His son is an LAPD officer. This kid is squared away from bottom to top. Ethical. He does things the right way. But he, as he and I were talking just recently, he's part of an organization that's carrying a lot of corruption stain on it. And, he's actually looking at moving on to another department. but it was his dream to be an LAPD officer, and now he's lived it, and he's starting to see some of the light that's coming out. I'm trying to talk to him because he's not going to be able to say anything while he's working there. He knows that if he does and he puts stuff out, he's pretty much going to end his career. But
Yeah, good for him.
you know, things come out. You put them in the sunshine, and I've heard people say it before. I said it last night. Sunshine, the light is the best disinfectant that there is. And thank you, Laura Waldy. Laura has gifted 10 memberships to everybody. Thank you so much, Laura. Uh, um, I can't say enough for folks. Each and every one of you, the things that you're doing is amazing. So everybody that got one, thank Laura for it. Joe McQueen, I lived in Denver for over 40 years. I'm sorry to hear that. Sorry. No, I'm joking. And was in the media. The Denver PD is not a great department, but they are not as bad as LA. And the thing is that, and unfortunately, in the law enforcement world, we find out about corruption and these other agencies and what's going on with them. We find out about it after the rest of the public does, because it gets hidden pretty well in the masses of things. Miss Sunrise Dawn, Poe, I don't mean to harass you, but I checked and haven't received a response from you to the email I sent last week. I don't know what might have happened there. I was going through and I was looking at that. Resend it to me. And let's make sure, because I'm telling right now, as it sits, I got about 45 emails between last night and today. And I'm sorry, but with everything that has been going on from last night's stream, I went and looked last night, but I was pretty sure I'd responded to it. But if you could resend it, I'll put my email address back in the thing there. So. And if for some reason it got lost in the fold, I apologize for that, but I could have swore I responded. Squirrel TV. Okay, everyone start emailing, snail mailing, calling, and or showing up. I wouldn't worry about showing up, because they spend more time in Washington, D.C. than they do in their own offices. But it's the emailing, stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, that's the only way that, the old saying, squeaky wheel gets the grease. And those who scream loudest get the most attention. So that's the thing is, but you have to make sure that you don't do it to the point where your representative, the FBI and things like that, to where they start looking at it as, it's harassing, and common term is nutcase. So, keep it on a civil level. I actually did a video about reporting on Scientology. Check that out, and it gives you some of my advice, what I think is the best way to handle it. And that's from someone who actually received complaints in a law enforcement agency. So these are things that I think are, important, things that caught my attention. I get emails literally that would be the equivalent of printing out 50 sheets of writing. The thing is that, something comes in like that, I've got a full day's work that I have to do on top of it. And someone has written this all out in something that they could have put the information in one or two paragraphs. And I'm going to tell you that they'll sit there, they'll look at it and they'll be like, I can't read all that. I just don't have enough time in the day. So, watch that video if you get a chance, because there's a lot in it that hopefully it will help you out and get you, the kind of response that you need for things. Let's see here. Let me see. I'll make sure I'm not missing anybody else's stuff here. If LAPD is not collaborators with Scientology, can someone explain this? YouTube Utah Outcasts archived mysterious Scientology kiosk found it. And that's the thing is that's something I'm going to be bringing up in the live I do about LAPD and their connection with Scientology. So yeah, there's a lot. Do you remember Rodney King? I think the LA Police Department has had some problems. I think LAPD had problems before that, and of course, I remember Rodney King and everything that went down with that. But yeah, I think that there were a lot of problems that were showing up within the LAPD ranks long before that. La Petrabella, I grew up in LA. I'm 62 now, and LAPD has always had shady problems. I'm going to tell you something, folks. having worked with the Detroit Police Department, having dealt with other large agencies, Chicago Police Department, some of the biggest in the country, they all, and when you start getting into that size of a department, there is always room for corruption that's going to happen. It's simply too big of a family to be able to parent every child that you have. I mean, when you look at the Detroit Police Department, when I was there, you had one chief of police, you had three assistant chiefs of police, you had six deputy chiefs of police, you had eight commanders, then you had captains, lieutenants, sergeants. All right. They had to do that because each person under the chief had a span of control that they were commanding over, but they weren't directly commanding. They had people underneath them that were commanding those. Then you get down to each and every precinct within the Detroit Police Department has its own precinct commander. That person has their own rank and file within their department. So it's going to happen. These things happen. New York Police Department has had, there's been long standing things about corruption within New York Police Department. LAPD has it. Chicago PD has it. We talk about back in the days of Prohibition when Chicago PD had problems, especially with organized crime that was going on there. These things happen, but where it gets to be a real problem is where you have an actual precinct like the Hollywood division that is clearly has connections with something. That's not, that's got to be washed out. And, I've said it, people have said, oh, you should be, if I went in and I was in charge, that Hollywood division would be emptied out and I would pick people from all over the LAPD to bring in to rebuild that division. And simply, that's the only way you're going to be able to come back and start rebuilding the reputation and the name of that agency. And you got to do it that way. But I mean, look at it from the top. The current mayor of LA had ties with Scientology herself. And even though she says, I'm anti-Scientology, no, you had ties with Scientology. Did you make money from Scientology? Did you, what did you get from your friendship with them? So when you're looking at an agency like the LAPD and you're wondering, how do you stop this corruption and the things that are going on with it? Who they got as their inspiration? They got the mayor of the city who has ties with Scientology. So it's crazy. I'm looking through these, and if you have a question, like always, put it in all caps. Take caps lock off and go with the question after that, and the same thing for comment. Let's see, Joe McCoyne. I have a lot of friends who are retired Denver PD. They tell me that it is rotting from the top. They are glad to be out. I don't miss Denver at all. Small town life for me. Yeah, but you know what? How many small towns do you hear about these things happening with? It happens. I'm going to try to pronounce it. If I get it wrong, please let me know. I'm not trying to offend you, but I take it as Reiki essence. I come from a cop family. LAPD's and now DPD's actions are disgraced and shameful. Absolutely. I talk about it a lot. One of my biggest prides as being a police officer is having honor and integrity in the job and trying to be, a good person, trying to treat people right. Do the job. There are people who will not be happy with the job. That one of the biggest statements that you learn from day one in law enforcement is if everybody likes you, you're not doing your job. Even though I was a person who held honor, integrity, and respect very high, the fact is that there are people who still didn't like me simply because I arrested their cousin, I arrested their friend. That's the thing. It happens. I have people, well, you wrote my cousin a ticket for 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. Let me see that ticket, because I never write anybody for 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. Oh, well, it says speed 1 to 5. But if you look in the notes here, I stopped them for doing 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, but I only charged them in the 1 to 5, the lowest denominator in the speeding thing. If I had charged them at the 15 miles an hour over, they would have been looking at all these points on their record. they would have looked at a fine that's about 3 times as high as it would have been. I was doing them a favor, but you know what? If that's the way you want to do it, if they want to come to court and they want to start acting like this, then I'll be more than happy. The judge will knock it right up to that 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, and sometimes that's a problem. You try to do something nice for someone and they're out there blatantly doing things and you have to do something about it. But the fact is you try to be nice to them, try to give them a little bit of help and respect on it, and they come right back and they spit in your face for it. So, there's a lot into these, just people saying, oh, all cops are bad people. 99% of cops are doing the job and doing it right. All right. Yes, there are bad cops out there. There are. But, you can't lump us all together because of dislike, because of one or something that someone else did. Dwayne Mansell, does letting officers work overtime for private security not cause many issues? I've talked about that a few times before. I don't believe that should be happening, that they should be allowing these officers to work in certain instances. There are things like the union meetings where we would be there in uniform and we would be getting paid to do it. But it was, our sole purpose was to make sure those union meetings didn't end up like our FOP meetings in nothing but a big brawl going on. We weren't there to push people around. We weren't there to do the demands of the union. We were simply there to make sure that people weren't getting hurt and there wasn't turning into a big brawl. But when you have people that are going out there and they're doubling and tripling their salary by working for an agency like, well, I'll tell you, my department, and I was absolutely against it. I never worked it because I thought it was wrong from top to bottom, where they had officers from our department were going to a city, 2 cities away from us, working in uniform as private security for this bowling alley. Nothing but trouble. I told them from day one, you shouldn't be doing this, but all they saw was money. So, it's like we had a guy that was, doubling his salary every year working traffic detail. I don't know how this guy ever slept. He was working double 7 days a week. Sorry, between the sinuses and the acid reflux I got going on, I'm having a good night here. Sharon Gregg, hello from mid-Michigan. Whereabouts, Sharon? I got family up in the Houghton Lake area. Let's see. We've got Violian, Damast. All right. Purple Groovy. What's up?
Hey, Purple.
Lori Marie. Lisa Marie. Hey, Lisa, I believe you sent me an email. I think I sent you back a response on that. DuPage County and Cook County, along with Chicago PD, I hear corruption is real. I can tell you it is. It's been well documented. And we got to thank one of our great channel friends here, Sharifa Dorder.
Nice.
Did 5 more memberships. If you were one of the people who was lucky enough to get one, make sure you're sending out that thanks to her. Sharifa has been, just like Laura Waldy, like Marjan, have been just tremendous supporters of the channel. Folks, if you can't, don't worry about super chats. If you can't, don't worry about memberships. Okay. You want to show your support, hit that like. Those kinds of things. I don't expect you to take out of your pocket if you can't. If you can, believe me, I so respect that. But I want you to know that this isn't just about revenue streaming and that. Just, being here, showing your support, spending your precious time here with this. Those are the things that I really appreciate as well. So, Christian Delahoy, why do we control see victims at the protests arrested while perpetrators walk? And that's where I think that a lot of things with the corruption and things like that, and the influence that this organization is having with these departments. Plus, you also have to remember, like I was just talking, you have the loudest in the bunch gets the most attention. So they're coming out and they're saying these people did this, they did that, and it's not until later where they're seeing the video, they're seeing proof that it didn't happen. I mean, look at how many of them were detained. And I went over that with Aaron Smith Levin and talking about what happened with him, how they said that he wasn't arrested. All right. He was detained for further investigation. You put handcuffs on him, began reading him his Miranda rights, put him in a police car, drove him miles away, and held him in a jail cell for 4 hours, held him in the police department for 4 hours, still in handcuffs behind his back. Tell me how that does not constitute an arrest. Okay. You can call it whatever you want, but the fact is that by the United States Supreme Court definition of what an arrest is, that certainly seems to meet the guidelines. Fourth quarter Fern, as an officer who has the authority, the gun, the car, the handcuffs, everything we tell our children to be leery of, I believe they should be 100%. And again, that's going to come back to the fact that, who you are as a police officer. I've talked about it many times about the fact of, my wife's statement is the badge doesn't make the man makes the badge. And that was a crucial turning point for me, where I started, instead of it being Officer Poe, it was John Poe, police officer. So, and that's when I found that I felt the most at home being a police officer. Why are protesters being assaulted, taken to jail while the perpetrator? And like I said, that's all going to come down to, you've got somebody out there screaming, they did this, they did that, I'm going to file a complaint against them. In a lot of areas, they can make that arrest without having actually witnessed it. So the protesters end up getting arrested, then they get to the jail, and then all of a sudden the video comes out and they're like, crap, but that happens. I agree, Trisha. Again, in a lot of these things, they should not be allowed to be out there as, in their departmental uniform, representing their agency and getting paid for it by private institutions. Not all cops are bad, but when you get a whole big division, yeah, absolutely. It really does reflect badly on all. And that's the thing is that I can't tell you how many times I was at the police department and we would see the news come on and there'd be breaking news about some corruption or something an officer had done. Especially after I finally hung the badge up and I was seeing all these things that officers were doing. And every time it would happen, I was just, oh my gosh, what is going on with these folks? So yeah, I agree. I live in a county in Georgia that consists of 3 small towns. Yeah, good old boy system is alive and well, even though the current sheriff is doing his best to put a stop to it. The one thing about a sheriff that they have that a lot of police departments don't have, a sheriff can walk in and say, you're all fired. I am rebuilding the sheriff's department and get rid of all of them. All right. So that's the thing, is that the sheriffs have that ability. And hopefully things will be working that way. Oh, you're just outside of Flint in Genesee County. Yeah, you're about, I think about 2 hours north of me. Yeah, I'm down near Metro Airport. Let's see, Suzuki. We had state police double, triple billing here, but they were not doing the work. Got caught, and absolutely they should. I'm gonna tell you something. There was a guy who I had went through the police academy with that came to us, and basically when I first started with my department, we were considered a training department because people would our department would hire them, put them through the police academy. They would stay with us just long enough to get the experience that they needed. We had one guy stayed with us 23 days after graduating the police academy and went on to another department. We then found out a little bit later, we're talking 10, 15 years ago, that the department that he was going to actually talked him into getting hired by us so that we could put him through the academy and get him started off in law enforcement. And then he went out and went to that department immediately. But this guy I'm talking about, he hopped from department to department to department, always trying to get himself moved into higher ranks. Well, then they found out in the department that he was with that he was overbilling for overtime and things like that. He should have been criminally charged for it, should have lost his job. What did they do? They swept it under the rug, and he ended up being a chief of police in that department. Why? Because of being knowing political people. So he was able, and plus daddy got him a lot of help in his upward movement as well. Crystal, Michigan, about 15 miles from Alma. Yep, I know exactly where you're at. Yeah, nice area. And that would be Stacia Flones. That's a pretty cool name. Veronica Bombria from New York. Susie, SP Squirrel. They were arrested for the lady that assaulted Danny. He pepper sprayed her. She ran into Schwartz and Sandy's. When they came out, she hit a vehicle and tried to push Danny. I remember that. Yeah, that was crazy. I still don't understand how that whole thing ended up the way it did. To me, that's just another example of that corruption that's going on. The cops take a nap on the side of highways and pretend to be doing speed checks. We weren't on a highway. I don't know, but yeah, we've all heard stories about it. Let's see. Oh, that's awesome. Susie still out of work, but gained it. Awesome. And that's the awesome thing about it is with Laura Waldy, with Sharifa, giving these gifted memberships for the folks who can't afford it. It gave them the ability, gives some folks the ability to get that membership. That's awesome. Let's see. I have an ancestor who was the first sheriff of Ohio County, Kentucky. LOL. Does that count? It does. My grandfather was associated with, I believe it was Magoffin County Sheriff's Department. And that's out of Kentucky. That's the West Liberty area. Why do police pretend they don't know the law when it comes to civil rights? It may not be a matter of not knowing them. Some of them don't know. I can remember talking to officers about certain things about constitutional law and things like that. And they, some of these guys didn't know it. And I'm like, you're a college graduate. And I got a guy who barely graduated high school who knows the law better than you do. How is this possible? There are people that do it. And then sometimes they will pretend not to. I mean, it's the fact of life. You got to remember, police officers are human beings under that uniform. So there are the same fears, there are the same triggers, things like that. So you have folks that do it. And I mean, there's just no answer for that. There's no way that they should be police officers. They were not arrested for the Motley Crue guy. Streets caught them staging 2 blocks over watching streams. It was for sure the use of pepper spray in a couple of nights prior. And you also have to think about things like, I know people that carry, they call them stun guns, the shockers that a lot of people call tasers. You got to know what your state's laws are on things. You use the wrong kind of, and we call them OC spray. That's what we as law enforcement use. It's Aurelium capsicum spray. And that's derived from the cayenne pepper. All right. But you have people out there that are using what is considered mace, which are chemical derivatives that have no natural basis for the actual spray itself. And then you have some of them that are using a different kind of aerosol propellant in them. So when you start adding these chemicals together that they're using, they can become flammable. So a lot of these things that people are thinking of as, well, they pepper sprayed them, or they actually didn't pepper spray them. They chemical sprayed them. And that may be illegal in and of itself. Those things you got to be very careful when you're carrying things like that, whether or not you're violating the law. Laura Waldy, when you were a chief, did you address corruption or deal with unprofessional officers? If so, how did you deal with it? Well, it's real simple. As a chief, I didn't have to deal with corruption. I did have to deal with an officer who was, actually, it was a volunteer officer who was very unprofessional. And basically, I took all of his toys away from him. He was doing some things like we had wave runners because we were along Lake Erie. So we had wave runners for the police department, and this guy was going out and he was basically taking young ladies for rides on the wave runner because he was trying to meet girls. So he wasn't allowed nowhere near that beach. I cut him back. I made sure that he had someone that I trusted, that I knew was professional, and they dealt with it. Now, as a sergeant, lieutenant, and above in the police department that I originally retired from, there were a lot of times that there were unprofessional things happen. I reported them directly to my chief, and there were a couple of times I came close to losing my job because those were people who were very politically corrected. But I always made sure that my voice was out there, and I made sure that they knew that this wasn't right. So, thank goodness as chief, I never really had to deal with anyone who was doing some of the stuff that you see that's going on with Scientology. But yeah, if there was anything in the least bit that I found was unprofessional or something that could be wrong in what they're doing, I dealt with it immediately. I don't play games with that. As a matter of fact, that guy, he was so restricted in what I was allowing him and not allowing him to do. I basically restricted him to the point that he walked away. He was a volunteer. and he realized he wasn't going to be able to do a whole lot. So he ended up just walking away, turning in his badge and his ID and everything. And it's simple. You either do your job, do it right. We don't need you. Leave. So, and that went right into his personnel files. So if another department wanted to see, he says he was a volunteer with you guys. What happened? Well, here's his personnel file. You take a look and see. It was very clearly noted in there so that another agency didn't get caught up in it. Catherine Reynolds, I have dealt with cops giving me a ticket. If you are calm, respectful, you always get a warning unless you're a repeat offender. The thing is that, people could get upset. And I never really took it personally. Some guys take everything so friggin' personal. That's the crazy thing. It's your job. If you can't handle someone being angry with you, then what are you doing? So, Sharifa, that's a good one. Man makes the badge, not the badge makes the man. Well, yeah, and that's exactly how it should be. Is you should bring honor and integrity to it. It shouldn't just automatically, because you put that badge on, suddenly you are something. No, you make that badge worth something. You make that job worth something. L.A. Wakeling, SW Teats busted them staging, watching live streams. I'm not really surprised by the staging. They had the thing with Aaron. They have a lot of things that are going on. Departments will stage like that. So that's not unusual. And it's not unusual for them to sit there and watch. I mean, what happened if they were sitting there staging and watching what's going on and they saw a Scientologist do something wrong and they went up and arrested that Scientologist for breaking the law? Would you be complaining about the fact they were staging and watching what was going on then? So it's not an unusual thing that happens with that. So, that's part of the job, is you're supposed to be vigilant. They were trying to show that the cops wouldn't look. They tried several times to show the video. Yeah, and that's not unusual either. Not unusual. Joel McCoy, in the 60s, when I was a kid, cops played ball with us. We liked and respected them. Times have changed way too much. The same is true for firemen. They are well liked and respected. And that was I actually made it in the local paper one time, because the owner of the paper was driving by and saw me playing basketball with kids. And he's like, how often do you do that? And I go, if I see kids playing, the thing is that I didn't want kids afraid of me as a police officer. That's just simply how it was. I didn't want kids afraid of me. I wanted them to know you can talk to me. Let's see. CCTV, if they had real jobs, they wouldn't be standing around intimidating people for social media brownie points. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you just want to sit here and you just want to crap on police for everything, then put it out there. Don't hide it in wording. All right. Just because you don't like police. But next time you get into a situation where someone has wronged you, don't call the police. All right. You can't sit there and crap on them and say that they're horrible, evil people and they're only doing things for a certain thing, and then turn around and, something happens and all of a sudden you're screaming for the police. So
true.
Yeah. Well, Julie, even if it's true that CCTV is a felon, it doesn't matter to me. But the, trolling, come on, that's pretty low hanging fruit. If that's what you're doing and you're trolling, that's low hanging fruit. Come up with something original. Chad, I think he's coming in on your channel. So.
Oh, okay. I'll take a look, Poe.
Stasia Flonase, with all the evidence, all the false arrests, and failing to arrest the perpetrators, when does someone step in and take names and kick booties? The thing is I am amazed by this. When we have evidence that there were false arrests made, we have evidence that there were things, that there's clear collaboration between Scientology and this Hollywood district. I'm amazed as well. And not, everybody talks about FBI. What about California? the California Attorney General, the California Bureau of Investigations. Why aren't they doing it? And that's why you got to get these emails out. You got to make stance. So have at it. And Sharia Zona CCTV seems to be OSA was in the other live chats. Oh, well, you know what? I'm flattered. Thank you for being here. So, and thank you, Sharia. Let's see here. I'm trying to get, man, these chat goes so fast sometimes. I'm old, folks. Erica M. Police aren't intimidating people for social media cred. And 9 times out of 10, police couldn't give a crap about social media cred. That's just how it is. I didn't care about it. And but there are officers out there who will take things personally, and they will basically real life troll people. It happens. I mean, there are officers who've been arrested for stalking. There's been officers who've been arrested for going and running the plate of a woman they thought was pretty, just so they could find out where she lived. Those things happen, folks. It's not something that doesn't happen. Let's see. And I wanted to get back to, there he is. Brave Kestrel. You know what a Kestrel is, Chad?
Nope.
Kestrel is, I believe, a falcon.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty cool, huh? My dad was CHP for 25 years. He would never have done the crap the LAPD does. I don't see CHP doing that now, because the fact is CHP has, they have a lot of the CHP I know are honest, honorable people with integrity. Nebulous 111. Is it possible to use vehicles as weapons? Absolutely. Such as examples. Such as examples by protesters attempting to stop a criminal. It is absolutely possible. Here in Michigan, there are crimes of using a motor vehicle as a weapon. So that falls under the felonious assault, assault with great bodily harm, assault with great bodily harm less than murder, and assault with intent to murder. So, and I'm trying not to get myself demonetized. So, because there are certain words that instantly they're going to demonetize it. Yeah. From what Ono Nora said in her surrender live, it sounds like more than just LAPD are paid off by COS. Well, like I said, I'm waiting, and I'm not going to go too far into it because I'm waiting to hear back from this journalist that uncovered, actually broke the story about the fact that there are gang members that were in the LA Sheriff's Department. So yeah, I want to see. I need the police. I am not afraid, but I know people have been wrong. Absolutely. I'm sorry that you did that. Who was not very nice in the field, but he would tell me stories and made me look at him different. Some of these guys, it seems like that's where they're getting their credit is. Oh, I can tell you all these great stories about things I did. Every cop's got great stories. We've all got great stories, but are your stories showing honor and integrity? Are your stories showing that you were just out there being a bully, or you were doing things that were wrong? All right. That's the thing, is there's a big difference. I got a lot of hilarious stories from being a cop. I got a lot of stories that'll break your heart. But one thing I can always tell you, none of my stories ever were about the fact of profiting for myself, trying to get myself social stance. They were about helping people. And sometimes some of the stuff was so funny. Oh my gosh, I just can't share a lot of them because there's a lot of vulgarity in them. But there was some funny stuff. Squirrel SPTV. CBI. I never thought of them. Who else can we get in touch with? You know what? When I do the How Corrupt is LAPD live, for a couple days before that, I'm going to go through and start pulling out all these contacts for all these agencies like CBI and stuff like that. I think that would really, people want to know. I'm going to give you the email addresses. I'm going to give you the websites. Start doing it, but make sure you're doing it right. Because like I said, if you send them a 50-page document talking about, you can't be talking about your feelings. You can't be talking about things that aren't part of it, and make sure it's not, this horribly long thing. You want to be concise. Who, what, when, where, how, why. You want to get all those things into it, but you want to do it concisely. It's just like when I would do up a warrant request for the prosecutor's office. Basically, my warrant request is going to be the officer's report that is broken down into the base elements. It's going to be my investigation broken down to the base elements, all of it combined, and basically painting a picture for the prosecutor. And that's the way I handled it. But again, if you want, let me pull that up. Let's see. I'll pull that up for you so you can see which one it is. And remember, I'm not too technologically advanced here with things. Let's see. Right here we go. And let me make sure. No, I want to. I'm going to just get the link for it for you guys. But if you get a chance, get over and take a look at this. And hopefully it will answer a lot of questions about filing an actual report with your agencies that will help you out with things. And hopefully this is going to give you information that'll make your report much more creditable. Trisha G, my pit bull wears PJs. I can't get Roscoe to do that. Get him to wear that plaid vest every once in a while. But man, that dog will literally do backflips trying to get that stuff off of him. That Northwood PD, that Northwood cop did that last year. Ran a girl's plate, got her info. Yep. And look, I have been a big proponent of they need to have much better intake procedures when they're trying to hire a police officer, much better psychological profiling, because there's a lot of them get through the cracks, and that's not good. I'll talk about remind me, Chad, in a second here about DPD and what they did.
Okay.
I was profiled, taken out of my car so the cop could look at me. He never ticketed me or asked for my number. Yeah, I mean, if that's what happened, that's, but I've been there on scene where officers have stopped car and they use a traffic stop as an excuse because they think there's something more going on. I've seen that happen, but I've also seen officers, and I've literally suspended officers for the fact that they were stopping cars because they thought a girl was pretty. So, Treasure Rescue, aka Queen Bean. My brother is a retired Leo who was injured in the line of duty, used to buy a group of homeless men lunch. These men came to the hospital when he was injured. Yeah, it was like my retirement party. All these people that showed up that, felons, people like that. You looked in my personnel file, there were actual letters from people that my personnel file had more letters from people who've been arrested by me than I had 3 complaints in 23 years with that department. So, no, 25 years, 3 complaints in 25 years against me, and all 3 of them were found to be unfounded. So, but I had letters from people. I was arrested by Officer Poe. I was arrested by Sergeant Poe, and I've been arrested many times before, but I never had an officer treat me like a human being. And that's because my thought process, and I tried to instill this in the officers that were coming up underneath of me. Just because a person commits a crime doesn't make them a criminal. All right. Someone gets arrested, they get convicted of, say, a felony. Doesn't make them, well, technically you could call them a criminal, but that's not the way I look at it. And especially if a person has served their time, they paid their debt to society. So let's see. Nebulous. In the UK, a member of the Metropolitan Police stalked and murdered an innocent person. Yeah, it does happen. And even with agencies like, the Metropolitan PD over there, there's a lot of things about corruption that's come out of the London Metropolitan Police Department. A lot of things about corruption. I mean, look at how many shows they've got. Oh yeah, Julie, I'll make sure to I'll get yours up in just a second, Julie. Question. I heard LAPD charge guys with conspiracy for defending themselves against their assaulter on Friday night. Would that be conspiracy? It's all in how you word it. It's all in how you word it and how it's explained. Because if you can make it look, feel, and sound as though you're actually the person who's being affronted, even though these people are trying to defend themselves. I've seen times where people have been arrested for defending themselves. Really have. Officer shows up and a person who's being assaulted grabs someone back, but the officer didn't see the prior assault. and they arrest that person. It happens. Let's see. And Julie has an excellent point here. Do not threaten in an email or phone call or in any other way when dealing with these officers. Absolutely.
True.
That's going to be the first thing. They're just going to crumple your thing up, or they're going to delete your email. So, all right. Years ago, and I remember this very vividly. Roscoe, calm it down, son.
Come on in, Roscoe.
Oh, he's outside the door. Something's got him. He'd probably deer in the backyard again. He goes nuts over that. So Roscoe, he's I can't keep him in here because if he goes nuts while he's in here, you won't hear a thing from me. Detroit Police Department had this huge hiring thing going on, and they literally they hired in hundreds of people at the same time. They completely just the Michigan office that handles all law enforcement certification or licensing within the state. We call it a certification, but it's a licensing. You're not actually certified as a police officer till you've gone through the academy and have been hired and are put on the job by a department. That's when your certification becomes effective. But they were hiring all these people in, and it was just too much for the office. The office that handles it has like 10 people, and suddenly, they're handling 3, 4, 5 officers being hired a day, and suddenly they get hit with a stack of hundreds of officers being hired. It took them some time to catch up, along with all the other agencies that are hiring law enforcement officers. They found out that there was a good number of convicted felons who had been hired by the Detroit Police Department. And you have people who've been on the job a year or so, have been working as law enforcement officers, have started a career as a law enforcement officer, and now you find out they're a convicted felon. Well, you can't purchase, you can't own, you can't handle a firearm as a convicted felon. And the fact is that, not only are they handling firearms, they have firearms, they are now working as law enforcement officers. So they had to go through and they had to fire all these people. But, these things happen. So, just because they're hired as a cop doesn't mean they're going to be a good person. Nebulous, Polnico, you would be an exemplary embodiment of an officer of the law. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Chad agrees.
Laura Waldy, yeah. Canadians can possess guns. We need licenses and register them on a national registry. We can get them. It's just more difficult. Background checks and such are done for some varieties. Yeah, and it's all going to come down to where you live. I mean, they've actually, here in Wayne County is the county that Detroit is in. Well, they actually had to have a judge come in and tell them that we have what's called a CPL. It used to be called a CCW. It's a concealed pistol license. It used to be called a concealed weapon. And there are state laws that say it must be processed and the person must be given either a yay or nay on whether or not they can get this license. The problem with it is that here in Wayne County, they were just dragging their feet. People have their application in for a year or two. Well, by the time they got to it, they go, oh, well, all this is expired. You need to start back over. And so there was a huge class action lawsuit against Wayne County. And the judge says, you're violating state law. You need to make sure that you're doing this within the law. So, and that's, the point I'm making with that is that sometimes, as I said earlier, when you have corruption from the top going down, how can you expect honor and integrity out of a police department when the corrupt people who are at the top are the ones who are hiring the chief? They're appointing the chief of police. They're appointing the staff that the chief works with. Chad, I'm gonna send you a message.
Yeah, okay, because I'm trying to find that. Okay,
what's going on? No, it's in mine now. Okay. Bye.
There we go. Okay,
putting up with that. Let's see. Iodine 63 in the 60s and 70s. Detroit had a big 4 cars. It wasn't just 60s and 70s. I can tell you in 1992 when I started out, I actually worked with Big 4. They got some of us the biggest pipe benders they could get their hands on, and they would put us all in a car together, plain clothes, and that's the thing. And that's basically what we went into the toughest areas And we just went out as these big four pipe benders. We would go in, you'd have these illegal nightclubs that had no licensing, had nothing that they were supposed to have. We'd go in there and we would shut them places down. And the hilarious thing is people talk, oh, the big four, they're just bad. You know, they go in and bust people. We didn't have to do nothing. We showed up and they'd be like, oh, snap it, big four. And people would just go. I've never had to do anything. You know, we arrested a lot of people, but the fact is that Big Four carried a bigger name for it than when I was actually working with them. They carried a bigger name than we actually did. They would see something they didn't like, step up. And back in the day, yep, those guys were known for being heavy-handed. That's why they would get the biggest pipe benders they could get. Sarah, I just blocked CCTV. We're not going to have to worry about that anymore. Can you run for sheriff office in LA, California? No, I'm not going to. If anything, I want to go south. I want to Tennessee, someplace like that. I'd love to do Florida, but the fact is I can't afford the insurance now because of the hurricane insurance laws they have there. Amy, I was in the wrong place and was set up by someone. The agent knew I had nothing to do with. What happened? The sheriff didn't care, just wanted numbers. Let me tell you something. There's a very famous case that's come out recently. There's a guy who does exact replicas of the original Batmobile. He's out of Indiana. People pay him a lot of money. I think it were like $200,000, $250,000 for one of these. There's a guy out of California who ordered one. He put the down payment on it, but apparently he missed a payment or something like that. Well, you're not assigned a specific car when you order this. You're assigned a spot in line for cars as they get built. This guy missed his payment. He got knocked back in the lineup. His car, the number that he had was given to someone else. This guy tried filing a report. The prosecutor says, no, you don't have anything here for fraud or anything like that. You missed your payment. You lost your spot. He goes to his buddy, who is the sheriff, and apparently had, my understanding is there was some personal connection between the sheriff and this guy. So he goes to the sheriff pushes it through. They go to the prosecutor, and there is a lot of discrepancy in the report that was given to the prosecutor's office by the sheriff's department. They send, I think it was 3 or 4 deputies, including the lieutenant handling the case, to Indiana with a warrant, went there, shut the guy's shop down, shut down his bank accounts. And my understanding is they took him into custody and took him back to California. Everything went to crap because all of a sudden they realized what they had done wrong. The sheriff refused to admit anything to it. You know, that's one of the problems with the sheriff. You don't have to have any actual law enforcement experience to be a sheriff. You can be just like anybody else. And for a long time in many states, a sheriff could literally come in and go, hey, Chad, you're a deputy. You're now fully assigned with the powers of the sheriff's department, and you can go right out there and start doing what you want. Thankfully, most states, I don't know all of them, but most states now have the requirement. If you're going to be out there, you're going to be enforcing the law on the streets, you have to go through a formalized police academy and you have to become licensed by that state. But this is a situation where you have a guy who is a politician. And remember, that's what a sheriff is. Grady Judd out of Florida. Love the stuff he does. But Grady Judd is a politician. Why do you think he's got his butt on the news all the time? Because politicians love the spotlight. It helps them in re-elections. All right. There is a sheriff out of Butler County, Ohio, who is constantly in the news. He's not in the news because he wants to be. He's in the news because he's doing things. And a lot of people are saying, well, we don't like the way that you're doing that. Well, he's following the law and doing what a sheriff should be. But the fact is that you don't have to have ever been a law enforcement officer to be a sheriff. And so they can make mistakes, especially if they've never been a law enforcement officer. And I am sorry, I am so far behind in these chats. Mary Gabrielle Soothers, I think all groups of people, there are good and bad. Absolutely. But from what I've seen online, the LAPD seems to have more than their fair share of bad ones. I think that it's not just a case of that. I think that they have a Hillary Murphy. Chad's banned him from his. I banned him from mine, so yep. He's out of here. Let's see. So, folks, I am sorry about CCTV. He snuck back in under my channel, and I just caught him because I'm so far behind the chat. A little off topic. Did you ever have any paranormal experience or paranormal calls when you were a cop? I had a ton of them, but nothing ever panned out. I tell the story. This is one of those ones that I think is humorous. And it was a bit shocking at the time that it happened. We had a lady called in and says she was seeing strange lights in the sky. So I get to her house and I look, and sure enough, there are orbs doing this in the sky. And I'm like, what the? And I go, oh, I know exactly what that is. Casino Windsor. It's part of the, I believe it's Circus family of casinos, had opened like a week before, and they had those big spotlights that do all that stuff like that. And we had the perfect conditions for it. You couldn't see their beams going up, but you could see the orbs of the bulbs in the clouds, like the bat signal, kind of how that looks. Well, they're just solid round orbs that are floating around on these clouds. We used to get calls all the time. I see a ghost fire going on, and we would get there and look at it, and I'd be like, oh, I know exactly what that is. That's the burn off from the steel mill. That's they had this big black pipe that was 100 foot in the air, and it's throwing out 50 foot of flame. Well, it looks like there is a flame in the middle that's floating in the middle of the air, and people would freak out about it. We got that all the time. I got calls about my house is haunted. I'd go there and I go, wow, okay, what's going on? So I would sit there. I mean, I even had times where people would call the priest from the Catholic Church in, and he and I would sit there. Nothing. I mean, it happened. I never had actual paranormal experiences with any of that stuff. I seen some stuff that would you'd wet the bed. Some of the stuff that I've seen in my personal life. I don't believe in Bigfoot, but I've seen crazy stuff. I've been places where there are not supposed to be certain kinds of animals, and there are. I'm in Southeast Asia. Give you a crazy story. I stopped in a national park in Thailand. A friend of mine and I were riding motorcycles. We stopped. We're sitting there. We're drinking water, just trying to chill because it's over 100 degrees out there. Need out of that sunlight for a minute. So we're sitting there in the shade. I look over. My friend's like, and I'm like, what's going on? And he just goes, I turn around and there's a herd of wild elephants crossing the road behind me. All right. What's crazy about that? These animals weigh tons, 9 foot tall. They're going through some of the thickest foliage I've ever seen in my life. Didn't make a sound. We didn't know they were there until my friend saw them crossing the road. So yeah, I mean, I've seen stuff that you just like, what? Yeah. But I've never actually experienced paranormal on the job. Question: politics require statistics. Is this translated into monetary incentives for police officers? Politics for police officers, when you see officers are getting involved with politicians and things like that, they're not, and it's going to melt down to a monetary thing because they get to be good friends with a politician or several politicians. And if that can help them build their career up, get advancements, get promotions, that's a monetary incentive. So yeah. And there are people that are in law enforcement that their whole goal is to do nothing but advance to higher ranks. I got there to the point where I was the executive administrative lieutenant of my department, but I knew that politically I was never going to be able to be chief. When I retired, that's why when I was offered the position of chief of police, I took it because I was with a community that wasn't looking at me from the political standpoint of it. They were looking at me from my experience, my career, my training. And that was nice. But in some agencies, you're never going to get above a certain rank without any political incentive. Thankfully for me, I got to be the lieutenant. And then through my work, I was able to be an executive lieutenant with the department. And, but to get to lieutenant, it was all about testing. Politics played no part in it. So LAPD was staging around the block, and one of the protesters saw the police watching the live stream. Some of the protesters, I would too. Some of the protesters, in a few minutes later, the scuffle happened and the police swarmed in. Tell me how that's not good tactical measuring. If you know that they're live streaming and you see what's going on, then you can see in real time what's going on. Now, if you're going in and you're making a bad arrest after you just watched something happen but you go in and arrest the person who's been the victim. That in itself is shameful all the way across. Crystal Smith, how can we as general public help to expose crooked cops? Can we do anything that is effective to get these arrests stopped? That's going to be, I'm going to be honest with you, that has to come down from a higher authority. I have said it many, many times that departments, and especially in situations like with Aaron and what's going on with him, the fact is that LAPD should not be investigating this themselves. LAPD should turn this over to a higher agency. And now that I'm knowing about the real corruption that's going on with the sheriff's department, then the CBI. That's the thing. It's the fact is that it has to be a higher agency that can come in and make those arrests, whether it be the DOJ, things like that. Let's see here. I appreciate it. The struggle is real, but folks, if you don't have the money, don't. You don't have to hit that like button. Show your support that way. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Sharifa, for gifting those memberships. That's the thing. But I don't expect any of you to give me anything. I hope that I earn your like more than anything. I hope that you're willing to enter into a civil debate with me. That's more of to me, that's a huge present from you. And the more of you that are, look at it. Someone showed Jamie Mustard prior content that I had done. Jamie looked at it and he goes, that's someone I think I can work with. And so Jamie came on, and I was so deeply honored that Jamie would do that. So, Brave Kestrel, why are they wasted taxpayer dollars watching peaceful protesters on live streams? Because again, that is going to be strategically, that's something that I would do. If I was staging, I knew there was a possibility for conflict that's going on. I would stage, and if I knew who the channels were, I would be watching them myself. And that's the way I would do it. And especially if they are assigned to handle this situation, then that's what I would be doing. Is I would definitely be watching this. You want to collect as much information or intel as you can on these things. And that's the thing, is that I would be doing that myself. It's not wasting money. That's actually doing your job properly so that you have the right information going into it, the right intel. Arresting someone who is clearly a victim, that's corruption. That's bad policing. So let's see here. Jane Brown, LAPD not responding to 9/11 calls, reporting violent physical assaults. Amazing. Everything is on video from several angles. Let me explain something to you. Here in Detroit, you could call in, well, not here in Detroit. We're 30 some miles away from Detroit. But the thing is that you can call in a 911 and you may not get a response for 4 hours. Big cities have a real bad reputation for the fact that people call 911 for everything. 911 call centers are completely backlogged. Most departments don't have the personnel or the manpower to respond to most of the calls they get. Now with Detroit, you want to make a criminal complaint about something that is a non-felony or a non-emergency, they have a number. You call, you give the information, give all the stuff that you need, and they will do a report up on it without even talking to you. This is what happens. The more that they start tightening the budgets, tightening that belt, the more you're going to see this stuff happening. Erica M., what does tick me off about the staging is that they saw watching the streams. Absolutely. Which means they saw the streams, which means they knew they were arresting. And I just said that equals corruption. That equals bad policing. You saw it with your own eyes. You saw what happened, and you went in and you arrested a victim. That is corrupt. That is bad. Now, here's the thing, and I have done it in the past. I have had senior officers show up to a scene and tell me, arrest that person. What for? Because I told you. Sorry, that's not a crime. Because you're mad does not equal a crime that is arrestable. And that's how, But you have officers out there that they toe the line. My sarge said, do it, I'm doing it. Well, how are you going to make this how are you going to make this right on the paper? You don't know why you arrested this person other than the fact you arrested them because your sarge told you to. They likely went to the district attorney for guidance and they did this by the book. Let's be real. That's not real. Most times the district attorney don't have the time to sit there and hold their hand and walk them through this stuff. That's just not real. All right. That's a fact. I can tell you right now, there were times when I would go and I would try to talk to the prosecutor's office and they wouldn't have time for me. So, and I could be on scene of a major felony that's happened. So, I know you don't want anything about money from us, Poe. Just want to help. And I believe me, Sharif, that's why I said I just banned him. I just banned CTC, him or her. I don't know. Love that you're here supporting the channel. Please don't take it as I'm thinking anything different, and I just want people to know that, there are people who can't afford it. And there have been people right now who have been in this chat who said that because of you and Laura, they were able to get memberships to support helping to support the channel. And that's because of you. That's because of Laura. You guys help people out who couldn't do that, who wanted to show their support. And I truly appreciate you, Sharifa. I really do. And Laura's now stepping up as a moderator for my channel. So, and Laura, you got to bounce. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you so much. Crystal Smith, what do judges think when victims are arrested and brought before them? I'm hoping they're going to read the LAPD, the Riot Act. The problem is most of the time it's not even going to get in front of a judge. It'll be just like what happened with Aaron. We brought him in for further investigation. We've let him go, and they never bring criminal charges against him. So a judge never has an ability to do that. That's what's crazy about it. And that's how a lot of these things in real life, people get arrested, they get brought in, charges get dropped. And then next thing you know, they're so happy not to be facing criminal charges. 90% of them don't say a word. It's the people like Aaron, like Streets, like Chris, the different people who have ended up being arrested that have a voice and they're making their voice be heard. Those are the ones that are helping to make the difference. It's people like all of you who are sitting here going, we have to get this out here. That's the thing. Getting it out there, the more people that see this, the more people that understand what is actually going on with this, that is how you start making these changes. Like I said, mainstream media is dying. You look at all the different things where they're laying off thousands of journalists. And the real new media, the real new news is this. It's this right here. It is the people presenting the truth. They're presenting it not from a one-sided, a biased, or a bought opinion. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I was so disgusted that I would turn on a news channel and they would be talking about something and brought to you by Moderna, brought to you by Pfizer, brought to you by Ford, and then completely gloss over. Ford had a major scandal where tires were blowing on vehicles. How many news agencies didn't cover that? How many? And if like Corrine C, I believe is Corrine from Brazil also, Chad?
Yes.
So she could tell you about how many people died because of these tire failures that were happening. And that's the thing. Dwayne, yes, that is absolutely true. You can sculpt the narrative to use anything for an arrest. But here's the thing. You got to be able to prove it. That's the big thing. And I have always been a huge advocate of you put your hands on someone, they better go to jail. If you're going to arrest them, you better have a legal standing to do it. If you can't meet that, if you can't prove it, then what the heck are you doing arresting these people? Why are you putting your hands on somebody? I hate touching people. I hate it. All right. And simply for that, it's not because I think people are disgusting because of diseases or things like that. No, you're violating a person's personal space. You are violating them. You are touching someone for no reason other than you got mad. And that's why I hate putting my hands on people. Yeah, my wife, my kids, I'll hug them all day long. They'll tell you dad's a hugger. All right. That's just how it is. Roscoe, that's my cuddle buddy. But thing is, if you're not a personal friend, you're not someone that I know and I trust, I'm not putting my hands on you. I'm not touching you. And it's not because I don't like you or anything like that. I'm not violating your space. I'm not violating you. That's very important to me. I talk about it a lot about the fact, if I don't know you, I've never had contact with you, I don't consider you a friend, I don't want you within 6 feet of me. I want you kept into that safety zone until I become comfortable with you. That's how I treat you. And I'm sorry, but that's, from being a police officer, I've watched too many officers get up too close and personal with people, and it ended up hurting them. So it's just a natural reaction in me. And Jamie probably say that's from prior traumas that I've experienced. Yeah, it could be, but that's just how it's been. And as someone who trained new officers, I always wanted to make sure that those officers realize safety. Okay. And also, how's someone going to be able to, how are they going to be able to trust you as a police officer if you violate them by touching them, invading their space, not giving them the room to be comfortable? So, Poe, you need to write a book. I would be so interested in your stories. I think a lot of them would be good. Other cops would find the humor in them, and other cops would think that they're, it's pretty interesting. But I think that I don't know if average people would be that interested. I think some of you would actually be bored by some of it. And thank you, Brave Kestrel. So, yeah, Kestrel Hawk. I remember that. Yeah. Let's see. Nebulous. I spent many years in a former protectorate. I understand. Thank you. Thank you. And I don't want you to think that I think that people overall are dirty or disgusting. I just believe in respecting other people's space. I believe in respecting other people's dignity. And I don't want to make people uncomfortable. I love when I see the photos of Keanu Reeves when he's with fans. You'll see him with his hands in front of him like this. Other people are like got their hands out around their fans and all that. He's making sure they feel comfortable around him and that they don't feel violated. Let's see, Tampa Bay man, and welcome Tampa Bay. With so much video evidence against police, how can they keep getting away with arresting the victims of assault? Because none of the people who have the authority to do anything about it are doing anything about it. Someone was asking ACLU, and you got to remember when I scroll through these, when I go over a comment, it turns invisible. So I'm trying to catch up to it. But someone had asked about ACLU, and that would be something, again, I'm not an attorney. I mean, I'm literally just an old man, an old hillbilly cop who's been hit in the head a lot. But, if you're talking about on the line of, everybody who's falsely arrested, by all means, I think you should be filing civil action against the officers, against the department. And that's where it's really going to start hurting them, is when they got to pay out a ton of money. Then all of a sudden they're going to start thinking, there's something going on here. We need to take care of this problem. And that's unfortunate that it has to be that way, but that's how our political system works with things. The problem is that there is a damn little accountability for the bad deeds of these cops. It's in certain agencies. And when you get to a big agency like LAPD, they're so big that they basically steamroll over everything. Let me tell you a story. Chatty's in your channel now.
Okay, I'll take care of it.
But one of the things you gotta, there was a commander I'm not going to say the agency. He was stopped by state police under suspicion of being inebriated while driving. They turned around, they went to arrest him. He took off. He got on his cell phone. He called his precinct that he worked out of. He drove straight to the precinct, got out of the car, and ran straight in. Every car in that precinct came in, and they turned around and they held the state police off. And there was basically a standoff between this agency and the state police. The state police commander says, this isn't worth it. We know who he is. We're going to go. And they had to go get a warrant, and they had to come back later, and they got him. All right. Not only for the DUI, but they also got him for obstruction, for running from the police, fleeing, which is he had actually committed a felony fleeing when he was doing it. And then they got him for the obstruction, and they actually arrested several of the officers from that precinct. But the fact is that some of these agencies are so big, they don't fear these kinds of things. That's why in Detroit, they literally brought in the Department of Justice, and they had overseers for all the different precincts for years that were sitting there and making sure you made an arrest and you were going for a warrant for something. Everything had to go through this federal overseer, and you couldn't just go out and do it. That's that's how these things happen. But none of this happened until there were huge blow-ups from the communities that stopped this. And that's how these things happen. So that's why I keep saying, the louder we are, the more we keep doing this, the more we keep showing what's going on. And amazing, this has turned into a more about corruption than what's going on. But the fact is that that's how these things happen. It never happens immediately. It never happens overnight. But the minute that a politician who has higher standing, or an agency that has a higher standing that can do something about it, realizes they can get some media coverage out of it, they can get some public advancement from it, suddenly they're involved. And I've talked about it before. I rolled up on a guy who had literally taken a pry bar, pried the back of a mail, and this is back when they had the Jeeps, pried the back of the mail Jeep open, climbed up inside, and then was going in there, and he was looking at the different boxes, shaking them or whatever, and he was throwing the ones out into the street that he was going to steal. I arrested the guy. I called the postal inspectors, and they're the federal investigating body for the United States Postal Service. Told them what was going on, had this guy and all that. They go, nope, that's, you take care of that. Well, this guy is violating federal law. You should be coming down. And I literally had a postal inspector tell me, it's just not a big enough deal for us. We're leaving it to you. That's the problem.
He interrupted their coffee break.
Probably, or they're watching Andy Griffith. That's the stuff. But it's the cops with the boots on the ground. We're doing this stuff. We realize we have a major felony. We have something that is big, but they're not interested because they're not going to get a front page article out of it. And that's a problem. That starts from the top down politically. There's so many changes have to be made. Nothing is perfect in this world that we live in, but we have to make sure that we're holding people accountable. We're holding their feet to the fire. And that includes your local council members, your local trustees, your state representatives, your state senators, your governors, your members of Congress, your United States senators, on up. They all have to be reminded they're accountable to you, not to some multinational conglomerate. All right. I think the best thing that could ever happen is you have a set amount of money that the government gives to each politician that they have to run on that, and that's all they get. You don't allow lobbying. You don't allow all these political interest groups that are affecting things. You make it even across the board. You get X amount of television time. That's all you get. That's how we start making changes. The problem is the people who are making the laws as to what they can or can't do as politicians are the politicians. So when you take someone who has a job that pays $80,000 a year, and they're turning around after 2 or 3 years in office, and they're worth hundreds of millions of dollars, where did that money come from? So you see, it starts way up on that top level, and it just weeds its way down. And the fact is that there will be people in law enforcement who will see that, and they're like, I got juice on a politician. I caught you with that undesirable, doing what you did. I got proof of it. What are you going to do for me? There are people who will take advantage of that, just like those in politics will take advantage of it. It's top to the bottom. So, all right, Chad, you got anything before we close up on this?
No, I think you pretty much covered everything, Poe. It was great.
Okay, so let's see here. Let me get to it. Tomorrow night, we're going to be talking about the innocent victims of Scientology. I think Jamie Mustard brought up an astounding point. We keep talking about bringing down Scientology. Our first, I agree with him 100%. Our first concern should be the victims. Let's end child trafficking. Let's end the child abuse. Let's end this SA on children. Let's hold the people accountable that are the ones doing this. Let's make sure they're going to jail. Okay. Then as we start doing that, we can show a systemic and organizational wrong crime that is happening. That's how you start bringing this organization down. A lot of people talk about let's deal with the tax exempt. Believe me, you get enough of them and you find that that entire organization is involved in these things, that tax exempt status ain't going to matter if the Wavy Davy gets 25 years. That tax exempt ain't going to do nothing for him in there. All right, look at what happened to Danny. Yeah, Danny learned really quickly.
He's having tough times, isn't he, Poe?
What's that?
He's having tough times in there.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah, it sounds like he's not having fun with it. So, all right, folks, as always, I appreciate each and every one of you so much. You spend your precious time with me. Hopefully, we educate each other. Hopefully, we show each other respect. Yeah, there's going to be some trolls that come in and out. It's going to happen. We just deal with it. And once I've got Gary and Laura in place as the mods, we're going to be able to start knocking this out very quickly. They're going to be handling it long before I have to. They're good at what they do. They work with Zach Morgan on his channel. I have a lot of respect for them, and I have a lot of confidence that they're going to help take care of things. Let's just remember, open dialogue, open debate, those are all positives. Whether it comes out that you on your side or the other person's side, at least you're talking about it. At least you're expressing it. So, and as always, life is short. You get one shot. Make it count.